You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Internal investigations are a cornerstone of organizational accountability, providing a structured process for responding to misconduct, policy violations, or regulatory inquiries. The life cycle of an investigation begins with an event or allegation, proceeds through evidence gathering and analysis, and concludes with findings and remediation. Investigations must balance speed with thoroughness, ensuring that allegations are taken seriously while preserving fairness for all parties involved. Employees expect integrity in how concerns are handled, and regulators demand defensible procedures that demonstrate diligence. Investigations also serve a preventative function, showing that organizations treat wrongdoing as an opportunity to reinforce standards. When conducted well, they strengthen workplace culture and mitigate legal risk. When conducted poorly, they can erode trust and create liability. Understanding the life cycle and its key elements equips organizations to approach investigations with rigor and respect. Triggering events initiate the investigative process. These may include hotline tips, whistleblower reports, compliance alerts, employee complaints, or even inquiries from regulators. Not all events warrant full-scale investigations. Some may be resolved through informal review or policy clarification. Triage at this stage is critical, ensuring that serious allegations, such as harassment, fraud, or safety violations, are escalated appropriately, while less critical matters are handled proportionally. For example, an anonymous tip about financial irregularities may trigger a forensic accounting review, while a complaint about policy ambiguity may require only clarification. Effective intake systems filter noise from substance, focusing investigative resources where they matter most. Intake triage leads naturally to scoping. Defining the scope ensures clarity about what allegations are being investigated, the relevant timeframes, the systems or accounts likely to hold evidence, and the individuals or departments involved. For example, an investigation into improper expense claims might be scoped to cover 3 years of travel records, relevant email correspondence, and a defined group of custodians. Scoping prevents scope creep, which can waste resources and create unnecessary privacy risks. It also allows organizations to set realistic timelines and allocate staff appropriately. By setting boundaries early, investigations remain manageable and defensible. Roles and responsibilities must be carefully assigned. Legal teams may oversee investigations to ensure privilege and regulatory compliance. Human resources may focus on employee relations. Security may manage evidence collection, and forensic specialists may analyze digital records. Segregation of duties reduces conflicts of interest and reinforces independence. For example, managers directly implicated in an allegation should never oversee the investigation. Independence is particularly important for investigations involving senior executives, where external counsel or third-party investigators may be necessary. Clear delineation of roles prevents confusion and reinforces objectivity, ensuring that findings are credible to both internal and external audiences. Preservation is a critical early step. Once allegations are identified, preservation notices and legal holds should be issued to relevant employees and custodians, instructing them not to delete emails, chat messages, or other records. Technical teams may need to suspend automatic deletion policies or preserve devices for forensic imaging. Failure to preserve evidence can compromise investigations and expose organizations to accusations of spoliation. Legal holds demonstrate seriousness and create a documented trail of preservation efforts. For employees, these notices serve as both instruction and reassurance that processes will be thorough and impartial. Preservation builds the foundation upon which credible evidence rests. Objectivity and independence must guide investigator selection. Investigators should have no personal or professional stake in the outcome, and oversight should prevent bias. For example, if a human resources professional investigates allegations against a close colleague, the perception of bias can be as damaging as actual bias. Organizations often establish investigation panels or use external counsel to maintain independence. Transparency about investigator selection builds trust among employees, signaling that outcomes will be based on facts rather than favoritism or retaliation. Independence safeguards not only fairness but also defensibility in the eyes of regulators and courts. An investigation plan provides structure and discipline. Plans typically outline sources of evidence, methods of collection, interview sequencing, and timelines. For example, investigators may decide to collect documents first, then interview witnesses, and finally interview subjects to allow for corroboration. The plan serves as both roadmap and accountability tool, preventing ad hoc or inconsistent approaches. By documenting how the investigation will proceed, organizations reduce the risk of oversights and demonstrate that processes are deliberate. A well-drafted plan also anticipates challenges, such as international data transfers or language barriers, ensuring readiness before evidence gathering begins. Proportionality principles ensure that investigations do not overreach. While thoroughness is important, investigations must avoid collecting more data than necessary, exposing sensitive personal details unnecessarily, or creating burdens disproportionate to the allegations. For instance, investigating a narrow expense policy violation should not involve imaging every device in a department. Proportionality reassures employees that investigations are not fishing expeditions, while also conserving resources. Regulators increasingly expect proportional approaches, as overcollection can create its own compliance risks. A measured scope demonstrates balance and fairness. Documentation is a hallmark of defensible investigations. Every decision, action, and finding should be recorded, creating a clear evidentiary chain. Documentation includes logs of who accessed evidence, what interviews were conducted, and how conclusions were reached. This record serves multiple purposes. It enables internal review, provides transparency for regulators, and protects the organization if results are challenged. For example, documenting that a decision was based on corroborated evidence rather than hearsay strengthens credibility. Without documentation, even a fair investigation may appear biased or arbitrary. Careful record-keeping transforms investigative work into defensible outcomes. Confidentiality safeguards are essential, but must be balanced with need-to-know access. Information gathered during an investigation should be shared only with those directly involved, such as investigators, counsel, or decision-makers. Overdisclosure risks reputational harm, gossip, and retaliation. However, some sharing is necessary to conduct interviews or implement remediation. For example, supervisors may need to know about findings to apply disciplinary measures. Striking the balance requires discipline and clarity about who needs access and why. Confidentiality reinforces trust and prevents investigations from becoming sources of fear or speculation. Anti-retaliation protections are vital to encourage reporting and witness cooperation. Employees who fear reprisal may withhold information or avoid reporting misconduct altogether. Organizations should clearly communicate that retaliation will not be tolerated and provide channels for employees to raise concerns if they experience it. Investigators should monitor for subtle forms of retaliation, such as exclusion from projects or negative performance reviews. Protecting reporting parties demonstrates that integrity is valued and safeguarded. Anti-retaliation policies are not just legal requirements, but also cultural signals that speaking up is encouraged. Cultural and regional differences must be respected in global investigations. What is considered acceptable investigative practice in one jurisdiction may be restricted in another. For example, European data protection laws may limit email searches, while certain countries may restrict transferring investigation data across borders. Cultural sensitivity also matters in interviews, where approaches to questioning may vary. Multinational organizations must design investigations that comply with local laws while maintaining consistent standards of fairness. This requires coordination with local counsel and awareness of cultural nuances that shape employee perceptions. Third-party specialists often play a role in complex investigations. Forensic experts may be needed to recover deleted data. Linguists may assist in cross-border matters, and subject matter experts may analyze technical or financial records. Engaging specialists ensures that investigations meet professional standards and withstand scrutiny. However, third-party involvement must be governed by confidentiality agreements and oversight to prevent leaks or misuse of data. Clear contracts and supervision ensure that external expertise strengthens rather than complicates the investigative process. Parallel proceedings create additional challenges. An internal investigation may unfold alongside regulatory inquiries, civil litigation, or even criminal proceedings. Coordination is essential to prevent conflicts, protect privilege, and avoid prejudicing external cases. For example, sharing findings with regulators may be appropriate, but timing and content must be carefully managed. Internal teams must balance transparency with strategic caution, ensuring that the organization fulfills obligations without compromising its defense. Parallel proceedings underscore the need for experienced legal guidance in shaping investigative strategy. Exit criteria and success definitions provide closure to investigations. Without clear criteria, investigations risk dragging on indefinitely or ending prematurely. Success may be defined as resolving allegations with documented evidence, implementing remediation, and communicating outcomes to appropriate stakeholders. For example, an investigation into harassment may conclude once the facts are established, disciplinary action is taken, and preventative training is deployed. Documenting exit criteria ensures that investigations conclude consistently and credibly, providing both accountability and closure. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Data collection is often the most visible and resource-intensive stage of an internal investigation. Investigators may need to gather emails, chat transcripts, collaboration tool logs, endpoint data, and cloud records. Each platform presents unique challenges. Emails may be archived across multiple servers. Collaboration tools often contain informal exchanges that require context, and cloud systems may involve third-party custodians. Collection must be systematic and defensible, using tools that preserve metadata and avoid altering original content. Over-collection risks invading privacy and overwhelming investigators, while under-collection can leave critical gaps. Striking the right balance ensures that evidence is both comprehensive and proportionate, supporting findings without creating unnecessary risks. Bring your own device programs complicate data collection. When employees use personal devices for work, investigators must navigate boundaries between business and personal information. Consent is critical. Employees should be informed about what data will be accessed and how it will be segregated. For example, mobile device management tools can limit collection to work applications, excluding personal photos or messages. Minimization reinforces fairness, showing that the investigation targets relevant data only. Employers must tread carefully, balancing investigative needs with respect for privacy rights, especially in jurisdictions with strong data protection laws. Transparent practices reduce suspicion and foster cooperation. Interviews remain a cornerstone of investigations, providing context and insight beyond digital records. Effective protocols require clear advisements to participants, informing them of the purpose, confidentiality limits, and potential consequences of the interview. Corroboration is critical. Investigators should seek to verify testimony with documents or other witnesses to avoid reliance on unverified claims. Sequencing interviews, strategically speaking with complainants and witnesses before subjects, ensures that investigators gather context before addressing those accused. Conducting interviews with professionalism and neutrality strengthens credibility and encourages candor, while poor execution risks creating bias or undermining trust in the process. Forensic imaging practices add rigor to digital evidence collection. Imaging creates exact copies of devices or accounts, capturing data without altering the original source. Hashing algorithms provide digital fingerprints to verify integrity, while time-stamping documents when collections occur establishes a defensible record. Tamper-evident storage ensures that evidence remains unchanged, even over long investigations. These technical safeguards are essential in demonstrating to regulators or courts that evidence is authentic and reliable. Forensic standards bridge the gap between technology and law, transforming raw data into evidence that withstands scrutiny. Privilege and work product protections are central to the legal strategy of investigations. When investigations are directed by counsel, findings may be shielded under attorney-client privilege, protecting communications from disclosure. Work product doctrine extends protection to documents prepared in anticipation of litigation. To preserve these protections, investigators must document that legal teams are guiding the process and ensure that reports are labeled accordingly. Missteps, such as sharing privileged findings too broadly, can result in waiver, exposing sensitive analyses. Privilege strategies provide a defensive layer that allows candid exploration of risks without fear of compelled disclosure. Handling sensitive categories of data demands special care. Health records, financial information, biometric data, and information about children fall into particularly sensitive categories that require heightened safeguards. For example, reviewing wellness program records or employee health data may trigger obligations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or HIPAA. Investigators must ensure that such information is collected only when strictly necessary and is stored securely with restricted access. Mishandling sensitive categories not only creates legal risk, but also undermines trust. Tailoring protections to the type of data demonstrates seriousness and respect for both law and employee dignity. Vendors often support investigations, whether by providing forensic tools, translation services, or specialized expertise. Employers must ensure that vendors are bound by strict confidentiality terms and that data is returned or securely destroyed once the engagement concludes. Vendor oversight should include verifying security practices and auditing performance against contractual commitments. For example, a forensic firm handling employee devices must guarantee encryption and restrict access to authorized staff. Vendor governance prevents sensitive investigation data from becoming exposed through third-party weaknesses, reinforcing accountability across the investigative chain. Findings memos distill investigation results into structured narratives. These documents summarize facts, identify root causes, and classify risks. For example, a memo might conclude that misconduct stemmed from inadequate policy training or weak access controls. Root cause analysis ensures that remediation addresses not only the incident but also the conditions that allowed it. Classifying risks, such as operational, legal, or reputational, helps prioritize responses. Findings memos are central artifacts for boards, auditors, and regulators, providing evidence that the investigation was thorough and that the organization is prepared to act on its lessons. Remediation plans translate findings into concrete action. Plans should assign ownership, establish milestones, and specify validation evidence. For example, if an investigation uncovers gaps in data loss prevention, the remediation plan might assign IT to deploy updated controls, set a 6-month deadline, and require audit evidence of implementation. Documented remediation demonstrates accountability and helps ensure that problems do not recur. Effective plans also include monitoring to confirm that changes are sustained over time. Linking findings to remediation transforms investigations from reactive exercises into proactive governance improvements. Disciplinary decisions must be documented carefully to ensure fairness and consistency. Records should explain how the decision aligns with policy, summarize the supporting facts, and demonstrate that comparable cases are treated similarly. For example, termination for a policy violation must be justified with evidence and consistent with past disciplinary actions for similar conduct. This prevents perceptions of favoritism or retaliation. Disciplinary records also provide a defense if decisions are challenged in litigation. Transparent, consistent discipline reinforces that investigations are not symbolic but lead to meaningful accountability. Reporting findings to boards, auditors, or regulators requires defensible summaries and exhibits. These reports should present facts objectively, explain methodology, and outline remediation steps. Regulators often expect not only a summary of misconduct but also evidence that the organization is addressing underlying risks. Reports to boards reinforce oversight responsibilities, ensuring that directors are informed about serious issues. The credibility of these reports depends on documentation and consistency, making it critical to align internal records with external communications. This transparency reassures stakeholders that investigations are handled with professionalism and integrity. Lessons learned are one of the most valuable outcomes of an investigation. Beyond resolving individual incidents, organizations should integrate insights into training, monitoring, and policy revisions. For example, if an investigation reveals widespread misunderstanding of data classification rules, new training modules can be deployed. Policy updates and monitoring adjustments reinforce that misconduct is not simply punished but prevented in the future. Lessons learned convert investigations from reactive responses into catalysts for organizational growth and cultural improvement. Record retention policies define how long investigation files are preserved and how they are securely archived. Retention periods should align with legal requirements and litigation risks, often spanning several years. Secure archiving protects both confidentiality and evidentiary value. For example, encrypted storage with restricted access ensures that investigation files remain intact and protected from unauthorized disclosure. Retention practices balance compliance with privacy, avoiding both premature deletion and unnecessary hoarding of sensitive data. Clear rules reassure employees that information is managed responsibly after investigations conclude. Post-closure monitoring ensures that corrective actions remain effective over time. Implementing new controls or training is only the first step. Organizations must verify that improvements are sustained. For example, if a control gap in expense reporting was identified, periodic audits can confirm compliance. Monitoring also helps detect whether cultural changes are taking hold, such as increased reporting confidence or reduced recurrence of similar issues. This feedback loop closes the investigative life cycle, demonstrating that remediation is not symbolic but operationalized. Sustained monitoring reinforces trust among regulators, employees, and stakeholders. Internal investigations, when conducted with rigor and fairness, provide organizations with both protection and opportunity. They protect against legal liability, regulatory penalties, and reputational harm, while also offering a chance to reinforce cultural values and governance systems. By emphasizing documented fairness, limiting collection to what is necessary, and tying findings to verifiable remediation, organizations can ensure that investigations are not just defensive exercises but constructive forces. Ultimately, effective investigations demonstrate that accountability is more than a policy. It is a lived practice, embedded in the organization's daily operations and long-term commitments. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.